Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Workspeaks podcast. This is episode one. I'm Kumar, and along with me, I have Deb. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about why microbiome and why now. Although the science is old, the technology is very very new. So Deb, let's shed some light on why the science is old. I mean, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, Kumar. Before that, let's first give a definition of microbiome because for the audience, this term can be new. And many people use interchangeably microbiome and microbiota. So let's define that. So microbiota is basically sum total of all the microorganisms, and microbiome is the sum total of the genetic material of all the microorganisms. So that's the subtle difference between these two terms. They are used interchangeably, but that's how different they are. Now, answering your questions now. If you go back to our ancient texts, the Ayurvedic texts and all, they emphasized mostly on gut health. So that's why the science of the gut has been there in our ancient texts. Science is old because we knew, or our ancient scientists knew, about the role of maybe not the microorganisms per se, at least it's not there in that way, but the importance of your gut in overall overall health and wellness, right? Now, in the last 10 to 15 years, and in our previous episode, we delved upon that the technology, or the new age technology that has developed uh, has impacted this science with much more evidence in hand now. And when we talk about gut, basically we are talking about the microorganisms that are residing in the gut and how they basically take a very important role in maintaining our health and wellness. So that's what I think when we say that the science is old and the technology is new, is what we are talking about. So talking about that, Kumar, I just wanted to ask you about the technology point of view. Um, if you can shed some light on the new technologies that have evolved in the last decade or so, which has enabled us to talk about microbiome the way we are doing today.
But it's interesting that you're asking me this this question, because I think before starting this organization, you were the lab guy and I was the guy sitting behind the computer. But we kind of interchanged that role a little bit now. So I think with the invention of DNA sequencing technology, way back when. The different DNA sequencing technologies that had come about. This was primarily done to identify the human genes and human genome. But what was also discovered that you could do other organisms, including microbial organisms. And over the decades, that's gone from sequencing one organisms to now where there is a technology called as next generation sequencing, where you can sequence multiple organisms at the same time. When I say sequencing, what I'm actually meaning is you're taking the genetic material of an organism and you're finding out what the genetic material has in it, the DNA letters and the sequence of the DNA letters. From that, you're able to identify what is the organism that is present. But more importantly, in microbiome science, you're able to identify the amount or the relative abundance of each of the organisms that are present. Now, next generation sequencing, I think first came about in the early 2000s, around that time, once the Human Genome Project was completed, and a lot of the steps of of sequencing the genome was automated. So from Sanger sequencing came automated Sanger sequencing, and from that they started putting it into a machine, and they started looking at multiple sequences at the same time. So the first generation of sequencers, what they would do is they would have a camera right at the bottom, and every time a DNA letter has been found through a chemical reaction, a specific kind of wavelength of light is emitted. So it is this camera that was capturing these lights, um, that actually let us know what the DNA sequences are. And now it's evolved so much to a technology where you have a small nano size pore in which a single stranded DNA is actually going through. And as it goes through, the electric current is getting disturbed,
Right.
and it is using this disturbance of electric current that you're able to detect what the DNA letters are. So, and from devices as probably as big as the shelf, or maybe double the size of the shelf, to something which is as small as a which can fit into the palm of our hand. So where we've gone in terms of sequencing technology. Any insights on this?
Correct. I mean, the last point was the most important point, Kumar, because for the technology to evolve and to make it universal or democratize a certain concept, you need these devices to be smaller and smaller. That's how I think the computers evolved when the transistors went smaller and smaller. The what you call the integrated chips came into existence from the big transistors, right? So that evolution is critical when we are seeing the evolution or revolution in microbiome now. Another point, Kumar, I wanted to touch upon was how this NGS is changing the way we are looking at the microbiome. See, the current paradigm, even when I'm saying current, it is still prevalent. That's why I'm saying current. Is the pathological or the microbiological assays that needs to be done to look at the microbes. Now, there are a lot of disadvantages or handicaps if you're looking at those assays, right? Number one is that you are limited by the way you can look at these organisms. I mean, they need to be grown in the lab. So suppose you're taking a sample from the soil and you want to look at all the microorganisms which are present in that soil. So you first have to grow them in the lab, right? And not all microorganisms grow in lab conditions. So you're limited by that. Number two is um, you need different media, different culture conditions, because some of these organisms are aerobic, that means they need oxygen. Some of these are anaerobic, that means they will grow only in the absence of oxygen. So those kind of handicaps are there. So you cannot look at all the microorganisms which are present in a particular samples, which NGS kind of breaks, because here you do not need to culture anything in the lab. And finally, as you know, microorganisms are not just bacteria, right? So that is something that we have. I mean, in our um, school days and all, we were only taught about bacteria as the microorganism. But COVID has taught us that viruses are there and they can be even deadlier than bacteria. And many of these viruses can't be grown in lab conditions. So, so NGS comes in these kind of scenarios, and that's where I think the NGS revolution has taken the microbiome space to a different level. The fact that many of these experiments can be done in international space stations is mainly because one, the technology has evolved. Second, that the devices have become smaller. So yeah, so these are the things that I think the new technologies have enabled us to look at microbiome, and hence the revolution that we are seeing.
COVID was a good example because I think that's where the general public got the idea about these technologies. I mean, even there, you could hear news about PCR versus sequencing that was happening. So any routine lab test to check whether you've been infected or not was done through PCR. And then if you wanted to know exactly what the virus was, which strain of the virus it was, then it went into sequencing. So that is the technology that we are talking about. One where there was one famous case in 2010 where microbial sequencing became really famous. Was there was an E. coli breakout in Germany, and people didn't know what the breakout was till somebody just took part of the sample where
Came through a salad, contaminated salad.
came through contaminated salad, and they sequenced the E. coli. From that, they were able to trace that's actually coming from Northern Africa. So they went back to the ship that was importing
Correct.
the vegetables from Northern Africa, and I think that was the biggest news and the breakthrough for microbial sequencing, and I think from there we've come leaps and bounds, and now we're doing microbial sequencing for all many applications.
So, Kumar, since we are talking about why microbiome and why now, we touched upon the technology part. I mean, the new technology that has enabled the microbiome science to go where it has gone. The second aspect, I think, which is enabling this science to be mainstreamed, is the again it's on the technology part only. It's a big data analytics, because we are looking at trillions of organisms, unlike other assays where you are looking at just one biomarker or two biomarkers. Here you are looking at trillions of organisms of different kingdoms. You are looking also at the host and the interaction between these organisms and the host, and you need analytics which cannot be done humanly in a small way, right? So we are looking at big data analytics, and since in the last at least decade, or if not a decade, at least in the last 2 to 3 years, this machine learning and artificial intelligence have come up in a big way. What is your take on these new age analytics, and how do you see that impacting the microbiome science?
Oh, forget analytics. I mean, I will delve into analytics. Storage itself is such a big problem. I mean, right now, I mean, from a global perspective, we're still a very small company. We're still buying about 20 terabytes of hard disk every month, and these 20 terabytes of hard disk every month. I mean, it just storage capacity just disappears with
So a new server bill for push on the company.
the first time we processed the data, we wanted to process the data, and we realized that we needed 512 GB of RAM to process that data. It was mind-boggling at that point of time. I remember one project where we had to rent on AWS. We had to rent a 1 terabyte RAM machine, and it ran for 20 days. And we had grossly underestimated this and under budgeted to the client, and we lost a little bit of money. But that was good learning. So yes, any kind of microbiome kind of experiment produces a lot of data. I mean, we're getting to know of all the organisms present in a particular area at a given shot. So, for example, when you're looking at the gut microbiome of an individual, on an average, you see anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 different organisms, right, Seth? And for each of the organisms, the relative numbers also varies. Similarly, if you go to the soil, I think the number of organisms is much wider than that. And when you look at our own skin, maybe the number of organisms is much lesser. So, just by taking samples from multiple areas, you're able to identify a plethora of organisms that are present over there, and the amount of data that this needs to be that is needed for this is very high. In the microbiome science that we do in office, we collect anywhere between 2 gigabytes of data per sample. Yes, and that's just one individual samples where 2 gigabytes of raw data is produced. Now this needs to be massaged and processed in multiple ways. What I feel in terms of technology, which is most needed, is statistics, and now you might call it machine learning, you might call it artificial intelligence, big data analytics, but at the end of the day, you're finding correlations, you're finding causation mechanisms, and none of this is possible without the underlying statistics and machine learning tools that can be used on that. How does one microbe interact with another microbe? And imagine there are 1,500 to 2,000 other microorganisms. around that, how they interacting with each other, how they interacting with human cells, and how they're interacting with all the food that we're eating. So
Yes.
in combination of all of this, the amount of data that is being collected, the amount of data crunching that needs to be done, and the amount of correlation that needs to be drawn, only machines can do right now. I mean, gone are the days where you could look at the data and as humans try and interpret what is happening. It is only with these machine learning algorithms you are able to go deep into the data and discover something that was previously not known. uh, you know this is an area that you've begun to you're liking a lot. I don't know if any other person reads more machine learning papers than you do, especially in the microbiome space right now. What's been your experience?
Very difficult. Uh, I have tried to read few papers, but to be very frank, couldn't understand much of it. But see, I'm a biologist, and biologists tend to be poorer in understanding some machine stuff. But having said that, Kumar, what I found very interesting is that um, people are also outselling this AI thing a lot, right? I mean, people are using AI in everything without understanding what AI actually means, right? So, we have taken a very conscious decision whenever we talk to potential investors or even our potential clients, we don't overuse these terms because we know that what we are doing is much more deeper. And just if you add AI in everything, it doesn't make it, very classy. So we are taking slow steps, I would say, because um, the kind of data we possess is probably the highest or the largest in Asia of the microbiome. We have done tons of microbiome studies, not only from the gut, also from the soil, oral, and everything, and skin. Now that we are launching the skin microbiome in Asia, it is again going to be the first of its kind. So for us, looking at all these different kinds of data in a proper perspective is important, right? One of the things that we are doing, Kumar, as you know, is to make our report better. And how do we make our report better? Is to look at the data much more in depth. And if I can, share a story with the audience here. When we started this journey 10 years back, we launched South Asia's first gut microbiome test called Buckspeaks, and that's how the podcast name comes from. And the report that we had then, because we did not have any template to work on, um, and if you see the report now, it's like hell and heaven difference, right? That's the evolution that we have seen. Moving forward, the reports that are going to come out of our stable will have much more machine data uh, or machine learning data incorporated with a pinch of natural intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So that's where we are heading, Kumar. And when we talk of big data, I think we should also talk about the metabolomics and the genomics, because when we are saying genomics, it's the microorganisms and the host genomics put together. I mean, there are few reports which suggest that there are certain genetic variants which probably would encourage certain microorganisms to colonize, right? And we are just looking at the tip of the iceberg. We don't know much about it. So I think there will come a time when we put together all this data and then come out with a very meaningful output for the consumers. And that's where I think our goal should be as a company and as professionals in this domain. So that's where I think the big data played a very important role in propagating microbiome and propagating it now, right? So
I just wanted to add one more point over here, since we are talking about machine learning with our recent experiences. I mean, so like you were mentioning, in the first few versions of the report, the disease prediction that we were doing. I mean, there was a lot more natural intelligence going behind that disease prediction, and we were predicting the risk based on which microorganisms have been associated with the diseases, and from reports coming across from studies across the globe. I'm looking at data now that's coming from machine learning algorithms, and the correlations are kind of unbelievable. I mean, this is something that I don't think a bunch of scientists sitting together in a room could have spotted. It is just pulling out some data, and it makes sense once the data comes out and you dig deeper. It just now makes sense as to why a risk prediction can be done this way. So I think future versions of the reports would get much better. The Although we've been right from day one, we've been trying to get our accuracy as high as we can get, but with machine learning, this predictive analytics will get much bigger. But microbiome science is tough. It's complicated. We try and generate reports that everybody understands, but I think we still have not gotten there. So, if you could touch upon a little bit about the digital revolution that we're seeing right now, and how that is helping the consumers kind of understand the microbiome science.
So, that's a very important aspect. Again, why microbiome and why now? See, if there's a very beautiful peacock dancing somewhere in the forest, and if no one sees it, then there is no dancing peacock, right? So, what digital revolution is doing to microbiome science and this space is to create that awareness. The fact that we are doing this podcast is basically part of that digital revolution, because we want people to see, and how they can see, because they have a mobile at their disposal. So I think this is the age. I mean, this was not possible even if the technology of sequencing was available. Let's say, hypothetically, I'm saying 20 years back, but if there was no digital revolution accompanying this technology advancement, then again we would have issues of people not understanding this concept, and professionals like us, scientists, doctors, clinicians, nutritionists, not being able to share the details with people. This also reminds me, Kumar, we did a survey, if you remember, which we tried to look at um, uh, the youngsters, the Gen Zs and the Gen X, what they think about gut health, and its impact on their health. And this came out, I think, in Economic Times, if I'm not wrong. But the output that we got from that survey, which we conducted, was startling. That basically showed that the Gen Zs, the modern generation youngsters, they know a lot about gut health. They know the importance of gut health in their health. When I say health, people will generally associate gut health with their gut issues. But people, for a change, knew the impact of gut health on their mood. Not only the gut specific issues, but on their skin health, on their mental health, right? So all these things, I think, have been possible only because of the digital revolution. People now, they have these AI chatbots and or whatnot, but even 5 years back, during COVID, one of the things that we saw was that we were getting multiple hits on our website during COVID, which was not there before COVID, because people were, looking about gut health, gut microbiome, their impact, their link with immunity, and so on and so forth, right? So I think that's how the digital revolution has empowered this domain to take the steps towards, I would say, microbiome literacy. Uh, so that's what I feel. What do you feel? Do you want to add something in this?
Yeah, I mean, it's also microbiome science is complex. I mean, it's not a simple one word answer. It's not like you've got a blood test done and your HbA1c level is 5.7. It's not a very straightforward number. I mean, it is very nuanced in that way, and the digital revolution is helping us deliver all that science in a language that everybody will be able to understand. And we still have miles to go before people can fully grasp everything that we are trying to uh, tell them. Um, from PDF reports. Now, you and I have been talking about, generating different forms of reports, and which something which I don't think any company has thought of before. And how can we give this information, back to people taking up a test in a meaningful way that they can understand it without trying to oversimplify or dumb down things. I mean, one word answer, or a one number answer. And if that is what people are going to be taking out of it, then we are doing them injustice by not uh, by not explaining the science properly. And this is where I think the digital revolution is playing a big role. Everything is now viewed in the mobile, correct? And we're still designing everything to look good on laptops. And that's where I think, as an organization, where we are evolving, and the science will get translated much better through this. But you know I know technology is there. Technology is helping us from the lab to data analytics to all the digital revolution that's happening. But I also want to talk about the men and the women behind all of this. I mean, it's the natural intelligence, also the natural effort that needs to be put in from various aspects to talk about this. In a lot of startup forums, which I've been part of, one of the key things that I've been telling everyone is, I don't think we could have done this in any other city. If we are not in Bangalore, I don't think we would have able to pull off microbiome science in any other city. I mean, for the best part of in the last 10 years, I think the first 8 years we were such a lonely space. We were the only company doing something with this, and the only reason we could pull this off was, the community of people that were needed was present in Bangalore. You had a science question, ISA was down the road. You had a management finance question, IIM was down the road. I mean, I don't literally mean IIM and ISA, but just scientists and my different professionals, from statisticians to nutritionists to microbiologists to molecular biologists to
Correct.
people understanding business, distilling the finance behind it. All of this, this entire community was there in Bangalore, and without which it would have been very difficult to pull this off. I can't imagine doing this in any other city in India. And I first of all would like to thank everybody who's helped us during that journey, but also would like to talk about this even more. I mean, yeah, what is that one aspect that you've come across, which is in this arena, which is helped you a lot?
I think this is very critical. I think the most critical aspect is the manpower. See, microbiome is a complicated science, which we have been discussing now. See, we are looking at trillions of organisms. We are looking at the host, which is human. So, and it's an amalgamation of different fields, right? It's an amalgamation of molecular biology. It's an amalgamation of computer science. It's an amalgamation of statistics, and so on and so forth. So, you need the right kind of people come together to understand this problem, translate this problem into a solution, and a solution which is easily understandable, right? So you see the layers of complexity and the kind of people required to make this happen. So so that's I think we were very lucky, Kumar, to have a very enthusiastic set of initial people, and without them things would not have moved at all. So Bangalore, because of its rich heritage, and not only Bangalore, I would say now India in general is becoming the knowledge superpower, right? I don't think that a company like ours, with the kind of financial structure that we run, a company like ours in US would need millions and millions of dollars to do what we are doing in fraction of that cost, and that is possible only because of the manpower that we have. I would not use the word cheap, but economical, and and this manpower is also very knowledgeable. Very in very few instances that we had to really struggle to find a person um, uh, who probably did not have enough knowledge in his or her domain of specialization, right? So that goes to show that that India's knowledge power is evolving. Of course, we are still there are miles to go to make it perfect, but I think that is where we have been lucky. India is, I think, sitting at the cusp of new age technologies and stuff. Only problem that I see here is a bit of more investor uh, understanding of this domain, which we will touch upon in our other episodes. But other than that, I think the government is also trying to push. There are a lot of incubators now. They are trying to push the incubators, the startups to mature and all those things. So I think we are at the right time, so to speak. And one of the major components of our journey has been the easy access to manpower.
Uh, and it's not only in science and technology or science, technology, finance. It's not only on that. One particular example that I wanted to bring up is also in design. We were sitting on the drawing board and thinking. Back then, I think this was 2017, 18. Price of the test was 36,000 rupees. We were sitting and wondering, how do we make the kit so that the person feels, that they're giving a sample which is very, very valuable. And for the gut microbiome, we need the fecal sample, the poop sample. So how do you make them feel that this also is valuable, and there's going to be so much of information that's locked into it. Stumbled upon this brilliant designer who made the kit box out of wood. Went to Channapatna, the toy manufacturing hub, the wooden toy manufacturing hub in India. Sat with design artisans over there, designed this very, very beautiful kit, and all our initial customers love the kit more than anything else in the process.
Just like a jewelry box.
It is, and
Yeah, I mean, it's a pity we did not continue with it because of the cost and stuff. But it was definitely a very, very interesting design. And I mean, to start off with, uh, in a domain, in a concept which is kind of a yuck kind of a thing, because you are handling stool sample. Uh, if you remember, there were many instances where the customers kept the box with themselves because they so liked the design and the quality of the box.
and there was a professional athlete representing India at the international level. Um, got convinced of the test and to give us a huge sum of money because he saw the kit box, and I hope he still has that as a memento. But it's not only this. It's there's science, there's technology, there's finance, there's designers, all of this. But what I also think that is becoming more and more important is the last mile for all of this. Um, you know, the Swiggies and the Zomatos of the world unnecessarily get bashed up about gig workers. I mean, they are giving employment. They are giving employment, and people are voluntarily coming and joining. Being part of this ecosystem to deliver goods. And without this ecosystem, our test would have never taken off. It's both shipping of the kits, and because we're doing the gut microbiome and we need to collect fecal samples, we need somebody to go pick up those kits back and deliver it back to our lab. This is not a lab test. This is not, you're not giving your sample at the lab. You have to collect the sample at home. Although there was one incident where a client came to office to collect the sample. And story for another day, but it's these gig workers that are very essential, and without them, none of this would have been is possible. We slowly getting into this ecosystem where we have identified people in different cities in India, and they are actually helping us deliver the kits, explain to the customer what the kit is all about, also collect the samples back and ship it back to us in Bangalore. And I am, uh, I mean, I can be thankful to scientists and technologists and designers who've been part of our journey so far. But, very, very thankful to all these people doing the last mile delivery. I mean, imagine collecting fecal sample and then keeping it in a house for 2 days before the sample is collected. Now it happens much, much faster because of this. Our biggest pain point, and it's slowly getting solved.
I think, Kumar, we have to really thank also as you said, I mean, the scientists for developing solutions which can be kept at room temperature, because the issue even 15 years back, if we were there, was how to transport these samples without using cold storage, because cold storage adds unnecessarily the cost factor to it. So shipping these samples at room temperature was again a very important aspect of why microbiome and why now. And I think you were a bit more modest when you said that we were on the logistics part, because I think our team, especially you and Prabhat, have been great on cracking this code. Because I think some of the districts or pin codes that we have covered, I am sure none of our companies in this domain have even dreamt of. We have gone, I think, to Meghalaya, to Uri in Pinagar, and we have touched south, of course. So I think that is something that we have been able to crack. And without this last mile logistics support from all the gig workers and the blue darts of the world and the DTDTs of the world, microbiome revolution would not have taken place. So I think the parameters that we discussed, and maybe we have missed one or two here and there, I think they were fundamental in creating the microbiome revolution, and that's why we are talking about microbiome and why now, right?
I forgot about the sample collection and the scientists behind the scientists and companies behind the liquid that they developed. I mean, initially we were importing this from Germany.
Yes.
And now I am so proud of the fact that we built an ecosystem, or we helped build an ecosystem in India where there are companies manufacturing this for us. And from there, they've also looked at other use cases of sample collection and starting this. So the ecosystem that we're developing is phenomenal. It's not only our company, but all the companies surrounding this. Correct. Is that it's becoming good, and I'm truly happy with what we are enabling over here. Yes. So with that, that's a wrap on our episode on why microbiome, why now. Next week, we'll be talking about the microbiome market in India. All the different players that are going to be there, and how each of them are actually reshaping the way we're thinking about healthcare. Till then, thank you. Bye.